I didn't realize I was being watched until it started talking back. It began with a book. Not just any book, a dusty leather-bound thing I found in the corner of an antique shop last week. Its cover had no title, only faint impressions where letters might have once been embossed. The pages smelled like mildew and something else, something metallic, almost coppery. When I opened it for the first time, there was nothing inside but blank parchment, or so I thought. At first, I used it as a journal. Something about its weight felt important, ceremonial even. Every night before bed, I'd write down my thoughts, mundane things at first. Today was okay, or I wish I could stop feeling this way. But then, 3 nights ago, I wrote something different. I asked a question. Why does it feel like someone is always watching me? The next morning, when I opened the book again, the answer was already waiting on the page below mine, written in ink that wasn't mine. Because they are. My hands shook as I flipped through the rest of the pages. They were all still empty except for those 2 words. My stomach twisted into knots. It had to be some kind of prank, right? Someone must have slipped inside while I slept and written it themselves. But how? My apartment door locks automatically, and the windows don't open wide enough for anyone to squeeze through. Still, I couldn't ignore it, so I decided to test it. That night, I sat cross-legged on my bed with the book open in front of me. Underneath the mysterious reply, I wrote another question. Who's watching me? Then I waited. For hours, nothing happened. Just as I was about to give up and close the book, the pen in my hand twitched. At first, I thought it was nerves making my grip unsteady, but then it moved again, this time dragging itself across the page without my help. Slowly, deliberately, the words appeared beneath mine. We see everything. That's when the whispers started. They were soft at first, barely audible over the hum of my refrigerator. But as I stared at the sentence scrawled in the book, the voices grew louder. There were dozens of them, overlapping, arguing, laughing, all speaking at once. And though their words were jumbled, one phrase came through clear. She knows. I slammed the book shut and shoved it under my pillow, heart pounding. Who knew what? What did I know? I tried to convince myself it was exhaustion playing tricks on me, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was happening wasn't random. It wanted me. Specifically. Over the next few days, I avoided the book entirely. I even considered throwing it away, but every time I picked it up, my fingers froze, like it wouldn't let me go. Instead, I left it sitting untouched on my desk, hoping whatever force inhabited it would lose interest. Spoiler alert, it didn't. On the 4th night, I woke up to find the book lying open beside me. This time, the message wasn't addressed to me. It was written about me. She hasn't figured it out yet. Keep watching. And underneath, in smaller handwriting, almost like an afterthought, tell her we're coming. Panic surged through me. Coming? Coming where? Before I could process what I'd read, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then off completely. In the darkness, the whispers returned. Louder now, more insistent. I fumbled for my phone, using its flashlight to scan the room. Everything seemed normal, at least as normal as things could seem when you're convinced your house is haunted by invisible stalkers. But then I noticed something odd. On the wall opposite my bed, shadows danced erratically despite the steady beam of my flashlight. Shadows of people who weren't there. That's when I heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate steps creaking down the hallway outside my bedroom door. Each step echoed like thunder in my ears. I grabbed the nearest object, a glass vase, and held it tightly, ready to defend myself against whatever or whoever was about to walk through that door. The handle turned slowly. The door didn't open. Not right away. It creaked as the handle turned, but then it stopped. For a moment, there was silence, just the sound of my ragged breathing and the cold sweat trickling down my spine. I wanted to scream, to run, to do something, but my body refused to move. Then, faintly, almost imperceptibly, the book on my bed began to vibrate. Its pages fluttered like they were caught in a breeze, though the air in the room was perfectly still. Slowly, I forced myself to look at it. The words on the page had changed again. Don't fight them. Before I could process what that meant, the footsteps resumed. Closer now, louder. My heart hammered, so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Finally, with a groan of protest from its hinges, the door swung open. No one was there, but the hallway beyond wasn't empty either. Shadows writhed along the walls, twisting into shapes that shouldn't exist. Limbs bending at unnatural angles. Faces contorted into expressions too grotesque for any living person. They weren't solid, not fully, but they moved with purpose, slithering toward me like smoke given form. I stumbled backward, clutching the vase tighter. "What do you want?" I shouted, my voice cracking under the weight of terror. One shadow detached itself from the others, gliding closer until it hovered just inches from my face. Though it had no mouth, I heard its voice clearly inside my head. "You already know." And suddenly I did. It hit me like a freight train, a memory I'd buried so deep I didn't even realize it was missing. A night years ago when I'd been walking home alone, drunk and angry after a fight with my best friend. Someone had followed me, someone small, fragile looking. A girl maybe 15 or 16, sobbing quietly as she trailed behind me. I remembered turning around, annoyed, telling her to leave me alone, and then nothing. Until now. The shadow leaned closer, its shape shifting until it resembled the girl from that night. Except this time, she wasn't crying. She was smiling, a wide, jagged grin full of malice. "You left us," she whispered. "Now we've come to take you back." "No," I gasped, shaking my head violently. "That wasn't real. That didn't happen." But the shadows didn't care. They swarmed forward, engulfing me in their darkness. I tried to fight, swinging the vase wildly, but it passed through them like they weren't really there. Still, I felt their presence all over me, cold fingers brushing against my skin, dragging me downward into some unseen abyss. As the world dissolved into blackness, the last thing I saw was the book lying open on my bed. Its pages were no longer blank. They were filled with writing, lines upon lines of text, each sentence describing something horrific, the kind of things people try to forget. At the very bottom of the page, written in bold letters, was a single phrase: "Welcome to the archive." When I woke up, I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere cold and damp, with walls made of rough stone and flickering torches casting long, distorted shadows across the floor. The book was clutched tightly in my hands, though I couldn't remember picking it up. Its cover was different now, etched with symbols I didn't recognize, glowing faintly in the dim light. A figure stood nearby, cloaked in darkness. When it spoke, its voice echoed unnaturally, as if it came from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have questions," it said. "We always begin with questions. What is this place?" I demanded, my voice trembling despite my attempt to sound brave. "This," the figure replied, gesturing vaguely around the cavernous space, "is where stories go to die. Every forgotten memory, every suppressed truth, they all end up here. But don't worry, you'll adapt. Eventually, you won't even remember why you were afraid." "I'm not staying here," I snapped, backing away instinctively. "Whatever you think I did, I didn't mean to." "Oh, but you did," the figure interrupted, stepping closer. Now I could see its face, or rather, the lack of one. Where its features should have been, there was only smooth, featureless skin, like an unfinished sculpture. "You chose to forget, to ignore, to abandon, and now you'll pay the price." Behind me, the whispers returned, dozens of voices overlapping, whispering secrets I couldn't quite make out. Among them, I caught fragments of phrases, things I'd said, things I'd done, moments I'd locked away because they hurt too much to remember. Each word felt like a blade slicing through my mind, forcing me to confront truths I'd spent years running from. The figure extended a hand, palm upward. In it rested a pen identical to the one I'd used to write in the book. "Take it," it urged. "Write your confession. Let the archive consume it, and perhaps you'll find peace." For a moment, I hesitated. Could I really trust this thing? Was there any other choice? Reluctantly, I reached for the pen. As soon as my fingers closed around it, visions flooded my mind. Images of countless others who had come before me, each one writing their own story into the book before vanishing forever. Some looked relieved, others terrified. None ever returned. I opened the book to a fresh page and stared at the blank parchment. What would happen if I refused? Would they force me? Or worse, would they leave me trapped here indefinitely? In the end, I wrote only 2 words. "I'm sorry." The moment I finished, The ground beneath me gave way, plunging me into darkness once more. This time, however, there was no waking up. Weeks later, a young woman browsing an antique shop stumbled upon a dusty, leather-bound book with no title. Curious, she purchased it and took it home. That night, unable to resist its pull, she opened it and began to write. Her first entry read, "Why does it feel like someone is always watching me?" And deep within the book's pages, another voice stirred, ready to answer.